Imagine you're locked in a cell, tortured, alone, no idea when or if you'll get out. The only thing you can control is your mind. For Vice Admiral James Stockdale, this wasn't a thought experiment. It was 8 years in the Hanoi Hilton, otherwise known as the How Low prison. Shot down over Vietnam in 1965, his captors tortured him repeatedly, put him in leg irons, isolated him for years. And the only thing that kept him sane, kept him human, was a 2,000-year-old philosophy he studied years earlier at Stanford, the teachings of a former slave named Epictetus. James Stockdale would later say, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but that I would prevail in the end and turn this experience into the defining event of my life, which in retrospect I would not trade." Today, on Signal Over Noise, we're talking about Stoicism, an ancient practice that helped Stockdale survive the Hanoi Hilton, that guided Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius through plague and war, and that might just be the antidote to the anxiety, outrage, and chaos of modern life. Because here's the thing, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond, and that changes everything.
What is Stoicism, and how's that going to help me get the good shit done?
Good question. Let's start with what Stoicism actually is, because it's probably not what you think. Most people, when they hear Stoic, picture somebody emotionless, unflinching, the robotic rugby or football coach that doesn't celebrate or commiserate when their team wins or loses. Real Stoicism is about one revolutionary idea. There are things you can control and there are things you can't. And wisdom is knowing the difference. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. You can't control what other people think of you, whether you get that promotion, if it rains on your wedding day, if someone ghosts you after a first date, or just things like the economy, politics, or traffic. On the other hand, the things you can control are your effort and preparation, your response when things go wrong, the story you tell yourself about what's happening, how you spend your time right now, and your attitude and perspective. And on perspective, we'll be exploring Stoicism through the lens of some very different characters today. We've got the lens of a Roman emperor, a slave, and, of course, a prisoner of war. But let's start with the more mundane. Here's an example. You're stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. You're watching the clock, feeling your blood pressure rise. The normal, non-Stoic response would be to white-knuckle the steering wheel, bash it, honk at people who can't move anyway, show up flustered and angry to your meeting, and of course, late. Now, the Stoic's response is, I can't control the traffic. I can call ahead, explain calmly, and use this time to prepare mentally. Or listen to a podcast, perhaps Signal Over Noise. The anger changes nothing. Okay, that's one example. Another example, social media. This is one we all run into every day, okay? As we've spoken about at length on this podcast, the whole algorithm is set up to put you in this situation. So maybe apply this next time you run into it. Okay. So on social media, someone might post something online that you find infuriating. Maybe it's political, maybe it's personal, maybe it's just damn stupid. Now, the normal non-Stoic response would be spend an hour crafting the perfect takedown, get into arguments with strangers, check back every 5 minutes to see who's responding, what are they saying? And by the time it's all over, you've ruined your evening. Now, the Stoic response would be, I can't control what they post or think. I can control whether I engage. Does this argument serve my goals or values? No? Well, keep scrolling or put social media down altogether. Most of us spend 90% of our mental energy worrying about things we can't control. We rage at politicians we'll never meet. We obsess over what our boss thinks. We refresh our emails or WhatsApp, hoping for a specific reply. We catastrophize about outcomes that haven't happened yet. And it's exhausting. It's anxiety-inducing, and it's completely useless. Stoics say, stop. Focus on what you can control. Let go of the rest. That's it. That's the foundation. Everything else builds from there. James Stockdale, our Vietnamese prisoner of war, couldn't control being shot down. He couldn't control the torture, the leg irons, the years of isolation, but he could control his response to it. He could choose dignity over despair, meaning over madness. He could refuse to let his captors break his spirit, even when they broke his body. And that makes all the difference. Now, here's what makes Stoicism so powerful. It's being lived, tested, and improved by people from totally different walks of life. People facing real struggles, real pain, and real constraints. Let me introduce you to two men, separated by rank and circumstances, but united by the same philosophy. First up, Epictetus, a slave born in 50 AD in modern-day Turkey. His name literally means acquired one. He was somebody's property. He was owned by a secretary to Emperor Nero, one of the most brutal and unstable rulers in Roman history. Legend has it that when Epictetus was a boy, his master twisted his leg so badly it left him permanently disabled, perhaps as punishment or even perhaps as entertainment. Epictetus' response was, "See, I told you it would break." After he was freed, he became a teacher. He didn't write anything down himself, but a student compiled his teachings into a book. His core message was, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Think about that for a second. A man who controlled nothing, not his body, not his time, not his life, found a way to maintain his inner freedom. He couldn't control being a slave, but he could control his mind, his character, and his response to suffering. This is the guy James Stockdale studied and drew inspiration from, a former slave teaching a future prisoner of war how to survive captivity 2,000 years later. On the other end of the social spectrum, we've got Marcus Aurelius, the emperor. He became emperor in Rome in 161 AD, the most powerful man in the known world. But power didn't mean ease. He spent most of his reign fighting wars on the frontiers, dealing with plague that killed millions, managing conspiracies, navigating the burdens of leadership. He also faced personal grief, losing multiple children, and watching his son, Commodus, who would eventually succeed him, show troubling signs of the tyrant he'd become. He didn't write a philosophy book, but he did write personal journals, reminders to himself about how to stay sane, how to do the right thing, how not to let power corrupt him. We call these journals meditations. In one entry he wrote, "You have control over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This is an emperor reminding himself to focus on what he can control. Incredibly, Marcus Aurelius admired Epictetus' teachings. In Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, he explicitly thanks his teacher for giving him a copy of Epictetus' teachings. An emperor of Rome studying the words of a former slave from centuries before, and then 2,000 years later, James Stockdale, our prisoner of war, was studying the life and teachings of both of these men. Okay, so we covered what Stoicism is at a very high level, the dichotomy of control. And we've covered two great Stoics. Now, let's talk about how to actually practice this. Because Stoicism isn't just some nice idea, it's a framework for living and has been tested in the most extreme conditions imaginable. Number 1, focus on what you can control. Epictetus said, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. When James Stockdale was shot down over Vietnam, he knew immediately, I am entering the world of Epictetus. He couldn't control being captured or tortured, but he could control his response, maintaining dignity, leading other prisoners through a system of tap code, and refusing propaganda under torture. While optimists broke when rescue didn't come by Christmas, then Easter, then Thanksgiving, Stockdale never lost faith in the outcome while confronting the brutal reality of his present. We'll come on to some of the mechanisms he used later in this episode, actually. He couldn't control when, but he could control how he endured it. So, how to apply this in the modern era? When you're feeling anxious or frustrated, pause and ask yourself, what part of this can I actually control? Write it down if you need to. Then, let go of everything else. Literally say out loud, not in my control. Moving on. Okay? So what can you control? And anything else, you don't worry about it. You have to let it go. Okay. Number 2, your judgments create your suffering, not events. Marcus Aurelius said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have power to revoke at any moment. Okay, what does that mean? The fact James Stockdale was in leg irons in a cell, the story he refused to tell himself was, I'm broken, defeated, or hopeless. Instead, he told himself, this is a test. This is temporary. I will not let this break my spirit. That's what he's telling himself. Inspired pretty grim facts there, really. Same facts, different interpretations, completely different outcome. Okay, a daily practice you can try here is when something upsets you, separate the fact from the story. Write down 2 columns, what actually happened versus the story I'm telling myself. You'll be shocked how often the story is the real problem, not the fact. Here's what the Stoics understood. When you remember that everything ends, your life, your problems, the people you love, it does 2 things. First, it gives you perspective on what actually matters. And second, it makes you appreciate what you have right now. Marcus Aurelius was literally the most powerful man on earth. And he still reminded himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Translation, you're going to die. Maybe today, maybe in 50 years, but it's coming. So what are you going to do with the time you have? Are you going to waste it being petty, holding on to grudges, procrastinating on what matters? What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Weigh in here with some thoughts. One of them, I guess, is a attitude for gratitude reflection. Like Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the world for his time, but like he'd have flipping loved a flushing toilet or a dishwasher or something like that, wouldn't he? He'd have loved being able to buy avocados for £1 every day of the year. Or we're fucking lucky, eh? And then the other thing I wanted to sort of weigh in on was that quite poignant, heavy one of facing our own mortality and our own finite time with a bit of a maybe a light-hearted tangent, which is the Jimmy Buffett, American musician. He has a song called I'm in a Hurry and I Don't Know Why. And the lyrics go, all we have to really do is live and die. I'm in a hurry and I don't know why. And it's so good. It makes me think of Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean when he says, the problem is not the problem. Your attitude to the problem is the problem. And so, you know, we have no control over time. If we just expand our sort of time horizons by 200 years in both directions, then our lives are just a flash in the pan and they don't matter. 200 years from now, the biggest podcasters in the world aren't going to be known. How do I know that? Because I know that whatever the technology of the day was 200 years ago, maybe it was the printing press, maybe it was like the best freaking newspaper journalist. We don't have a clue who they were. We don't have a clue who the best radio presenter was when the radio was this modern new innovation. And the same is true for television, and that's not that long ago. So, you're not doing it for legacy because actually most of us are just not in a position to be remembered over 200 years. So we're doing it for now and for us and our own, and therefore, act on what you can control and don't sweat stuff that you can't control. You can't control who is and is not remembered. So it's probably not worth dwelling on that too much. It's about figuring out what you should do, what has meaning and importance within your own life span. And if the knock-on effect happens to be that you are remembered 200 years after you're dead, then let that be a pleasant side effect or repercussion of your actions, not the reason you get out of bed in the morning, because you're never going to be able to measure yourself up against it. You're never going to be able to say, yes, I've progressed definitively towards my goal. That's what I'm going to weigh in on that one.
Great weighing in, mate. I wasn't expecting a lesson on Stoicism from Captain Jack Sparrow, but I would greatly appreciate it because you're right on the money there. Actually, on the point of reminding yourself of this, the daily practice I've got down here for this particular virtue is set a reminder on your phone that says "Memento Mori," which in Latin means "Remember, you will die." Daily reminder, and when it goes off, you can ask yourself the question: if this was my last day, would I waste it being angry about this? Would I spend it doing what I'm doing right now? Is there something I've been putting off? This is not to leave some lasting legacy that's going to last for centuries, but actually it's just to make sure that you're living in the present, in the moment, and that you are enjoying and appreciating the joys that life can give you. Memento mori, remember you will die. By the way, that doesn't have to be like as dark and as it sounds. There are things you can think about here. So okay, Petita says, when you kiss your child, remind yourself they are mortal. And that's not to say, they're going to pass away, but it's actually much more profound. It's about your child will not be a child forever. Your parents will not be around forever. That person you love won't be here forever. So appreciate them now. Don't take them for granted. Memento mori. There we go.
I guess the real importance of that message, the appreciate them now one, is if you string that together and day after day, action after action, you show the people that you love and you care about that you love them and that you care about them. Then the compound interest on that compared to day after day thinking, I'll get round to it, I'll make time for it, we've got plenty of time. It just puts that relationship in such a better place, and it allows you to have poured out all this love and caring that you feel like these people deserve. Yeah, sounds great. Maybe I'll practice some of that.
It's one of those things as well, I think, for any 20-something-year-olds listening to this, that I think when you hit your 30s, you appreciate and realize how fast time flies, and how you have to really truly make the effort with people and with relationships to sustain them. We're no longer at university living together with nothing better to do than to go out on a Monday night drinking. So yeah, I think it's an important reminder. Okay, number 4, what virtue we've got here? Act with virtue, regardless of outcomes. Epictetus said, remember that you are an actor in a play. You can't control the role you're given. You can control how well you play it. Probably particularly pertinent for a man born into slavery. But in Stockdale's experience, he couldn't control whether he'd survive, but he could control whether he'd survive with honor, maintaining the code of conduct, protecting fellow prisoners, and resisting even when compliance seemed easier. So, a practice here you can do is before making a decision, ask, what would the person I want to be do in this situation? Not what is the best outcome, but instead, what's the right thing to do? Then do that, regardless of how it turns out. Okay. Acting with virtue regardless of outcomes. Okay, now this next one. I think this is quite an interesting one. So, practice negative visualization. Imagine losing what you value. Not to be pessimistic, but to build resilience and gratitude. So, Stockdale assumed the worst from day one: years of captivity, torture, possible death. By accepting these realities, he removed their power to devastate him. He was prepared mentally. On the other hand, the optimists who assumed rescue, they suffered more and more with each disappointment. Every Christmas that went by, every Easter, every Thanksgiving. Now, a daily practice we can do and apply in a much more real sense, or much more relatable sense, is a morning coffee practice. Every morning, while you're drinking your coffee, imagine this is the last time you'll have it. Really taste it. Appreciate the warmth, the flavor, the quiet moment. Then expand this to other things in your day. This might be the last time you see your partner before work, the last time you drive this route, the last time you're healthy enough to do this. It sounds depressing, but it will actually make you present and grateful. Okay. Those are the 5 core principles of Stoicism. Wow. At least how I see them. There are many, many more principles. So,
Yeah. And I guess those are, your 5 key principles, our 5 key principles. I'll adopt them all wholeheartedly because they sound great for applying Stoicism to a modern, meaningful, and productive life. If we're not trying to, espouse our knowledge and acclaim as scholars of Stoicism, we're definitely not scholars of Stoicism. We're basically extractively strip mining Stoicism for that which we find valuable and can implement into our own lives to increase that sort of rich vein of meaningfulness for ourselves. But I've made that pretty wordy. I'd like to ask you, Sam, any damned fool can make something like Stoicism seem complicated. Can you make it simple for me?
I can. And just before I do that, I'm going to just address one thing there about strip mining Stoicism. There are also elements of Stoicism that talk about physics, and they had some pretty wild ideas about physics, which definitely don't align with maybe what you can see through a microscope. So yeah, I think it's important that you're right. We acknowledge that we are just taking the bits that are relevant, but this is a philosophy that was created 2,000 years ago, and it tried to explain the world, at least how they saw it. So yeah, it's only right that we pick and choose the bits that are relevant to our lives. Now, as for making it simple, let's go through this. So, Stoicism isn't complicated. It's not some abstract philosophy for academics. It worked for a slave, it worked for an emperor, it worked for a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and it can work for you. Here's what you need to remember: the 5 core principles. 1. Focus on what you control: your effort, your attitude, and your response. Let go of the rest, the things you don't control. 2. Your judgments create your suffering, not events. Separate the fact from the story you're telling yourself. You control your judgments, not events. Okay? 3. Everything is temporary. Remember that you will die. Let that determine what you do and say and think. 4. Act with virtue regardless of outcome. You don't control the role you're given. You control how you play it. Our Epictetus said. 5. Practice negative visualization. Imagine losing what you value to build resilience and gratitude. That's it. That's Stoicism.
God, that sounds easy, but how am I going to implement that in my life?
Good job you asked. Why am I giving you prescription, doctor? Okay, pick one of these things to start with this week. All right. So we've got one daily practice we can do for each of these 5 core principles. Okay. First, the control audit. When anxious, ask, what can I actually control? And let go of the rest. 2, facts versus stories. Okay. When upset, create 2 columns. What in the situation can I control? What's happened? Versus my story about it. 3, memento mori reminder. Set a daily phone reminder that reads memento mori, i.e., remember you will die. When it goes off, ask, would I waste my last day on this? 4, the virtue check. Before decisions, ask, what would the person I want to be do? Then do that. And 5, the final one, morning appreciation. Tomorrow morning, with your coffee, imagine it's the last time. Really taste it. Expand into other things you take for granted. Start with one, practice it for a week, then add another. Because here's the truth. You're going to face hardship. Things will go wrong. People will disappoint you. And plans will fail. And when that happens, you'll have a choice. You can spiral or you can respond like a Stoic, like Epictetus, who found freedom in chains, like Marcus Aurelius, who stayed humble with unlimited power, and like James Stockdale, who survived 8 years of hell with his dignity intact. You have that same power, the power to control your response, the power to choose your perspective, and the power to act with virtue no matter what happens. The question is, will you use it? Okay. So, if this resonated with you, do us a favor, subscribe to the Signal Over Noise podcast, leave us a 5-star rating, and share the episode with somebody who needs to hear it. Until next time, be well and do good.